All right, we have been live for 10 seconds and still seem to be holding strong at about 3,000 kbps. So I think we are good to go. Thank you all for joining us again for another session of Talkin'ronpa, our Dangan 3 animation podcast with slides. I am, as always, your host, Bograt.
I am the Krampus.
I'm Hunter Green.
And I'm Vincent. Shiv
Uh,
is out doing stuff.
yeah, Shiv is going to be either late or absent today. He did let us know in advance, so no big deal. So today we're going to be covering Future Arc and Despair Arc, episodes 9 and 10. We are coming up pretty quick to the end of the series. In fact, next session is going to be our last session of this show.
Before you
So-
get into the rundown, side stream.
Oh, yeah. Knew I was forgetting something.
Wouldn't be a Sound Goblin stream without forgetting something.
All right, side stream should be up and running.
Yep, we got it now.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
But yeah, next session will be the final session of Talkin'ronpa, and then we will probably take a break for a little bit. We'll talk about it more at the end, but next session will not actually be next weekend, but the following weekend. And then after that, it would put us right into the holiday area, so we might take a break for the rest of December and come back with Sound Goblin story time resuming in January, most likely with Danganronpa V3 at that point, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, that being said, so today we're going over episodes 9 and 10 of Future Arc and Despair Arc. So let's get to it. Future Arc Episode 9, since it's been a while, we start up the episode with another Monokuma recap, go over what's happened so far. This is initially presented as a joke, as if the whole episode is going to be a complete recap episode, but immediately gives way to the actual brief pre-intro recap. It would be very funny of them to do a full recap episode in a series that effectively only has 12 episodes for it, but even Danganronpa isn't quite crazy and stupid enough to do that. Following
They would kind of have to combine both series, and even then, recap episodes are kind of dumb.
But following the recap, even still before the intro, we do get kind of back into where we had left off, which was, if you remember at the end of episode 8, the last thing we saw was the building collapsing. So we see Yasuhiro, who is still outside the building, getting blown back across the platform by the shockwave as the building collapses. He's obviously worried that everyone's died, but we immediately cut to the Monokuma Lounge, showing that somehow, despite the building collapsing, the people inside do not seem to be crushed or, honestly, anything more than a little shaken up. Why this is becomes immediately apparent as Sakakura manages to pry open the, secret door that he had found, and finds out that this entire time, they've actually been in a sub-base beneath the water surface. This kicks right into the intro with that shocking revelation. Coming back.
Oh, what a surprise! An unexpected twist.
Yeah, in a Danganronpa series, you don't say.
Yeah.
I do think it's kind of interesting, actually, just seeing the design here, because there's all these pipes and stuff running down here, which means that there's obviously some sort of connection, probably bringing air and whatnot into the facility from up above. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that there's this little veranda into the ocean kind of thing going on. Go ahead.
It clearly, was all part of that trick for that secret door.
Yep.
It was built with the purpose of tricking.
As we come back from the intro, we find ourselves with Kyoko and Mitarai, who are running down the hallway. Kyoko informs Mitarai that the secret door was undoubtedly a fake. She already knew that they were under the ocean in an identical copy of Future Foundation headquarters underneath the actual facility. To some extent, she had actually known it all along, because the conference room they woke up in after the sleeping gas did not have a gouge in it from when Izuyoi had thrown a knife into it before, back when the whole tensions were running high at the trial. Basically, Kyoko reasons that they were moved to this secret facility in order to keep other people from being able to come and help them and interfere with the killing game. And also that because Kyosuke was the one who built Future Foundation headquarters, he's the most likely perpetrator behind the events, because he obviously would have to know about, a secret duplicate base being built underneath the base. I think this is pretty sound logic if you assume Kyosuke is competent, but then that's a hell of an assumption. Back in yet another hallway, which, as we went through these episodes, I did kind of realize most of this series seems to be set in hallways. Gekugahara has been taking a bit of a beating, having to reseat one of her eyes from Kyosuke's beating. She switches into yet another mode, elimination mode, in order to continue fighting against Kyosuke. She has a drill hand and a gun hand and these Doc Ock arms and all kinds of crazy shit going on here. But it amounts to basically nothing. She fires off some missiles from that backpack on her back. Kyosuke just slides under them, severs one of the robot's legs, and causes it to fall on its own missile pack, which leads to another explosion. As he's kind of wandering through the hallways after her, he basically finds the robot mostly disabled with its whole kind of shit all wrecked, and finds a smartphone sort of device embedded in its chest, which he determines to be its quote-unquote brain. And we also actually get to see a couple other unused NG codes here, since that's what the information actually displayed on the device are. We see that Chisa's NG code was Kyosuke dying, and Great Gozu's NG code was being pinned for a 3 count. Kyosuke, yeah, for a wrestler, fair enough. That also is, we've had discussions about this before, that one specifically feels to me very much okay, no, each NG code was definitely designed for each person it was assigned to. There's no way that would have randomly been Great Gozu's NG code. But yeah, so Kyosuke basically rips the smartphone out of the robot, and then redoubles his determination to succeed at his goals as he bisects the robot. He's a totally stable individual here, certainly totally in grasp of all of his faculties. Nothing going wrong here, nothing weird to see here. Just a totally normal bastion of hope. At this point, Sakakura comes upon Kyosuke, just kind of says hey, let's go, we got to do this, and just kind of starts walking off down the hallway ahead of Kyosuke.
All the while muttering under his breath about how he's going to sacrifice everyone.
Yes, Kyosuke is talking about I'm gonna become hope no matter who or what I have to sacrifice, blah blah blah. Back with Kyoko and Miturai. Miturai is having trouble believing that Kyosuke could be the one behind this. Basically just saying I've worked with him for a while. He seems he's very devoted to this whole thing of hope, and it just feels hard to believe that he would be the one behind this whole situation. Kyoko basically says they need to find Naegi, and Miturai expresses doubt that Naegi can help at all. Kyoko explains that Naegi is the kind of guy who will always rise to the occasion and do whatever it takes to make sure his friends are okay, no matter how bad the situation is, or what he has to sacrifice himself in order to make things turn out okay. This is very clearly done as sort of a juxtaposition to Kyosuke, who is very focused on sacrificing others and other things, whereas it's, Kyoko is very much presenting Naegi as being very self-sacrificing and always, taking it on his own shoulders and taking the hits himself to make sure that things turn out all right. Again, I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards. Danganronpa as a series has never been very subtle. Now, of course, as Kyoko is relaying these heartfelt sentiments, Asahina and Naegi come walking up behind her without her noticing. They comment briefly on it, and Kyoko just kind of plays it off. And they sort of sit together and have a quick meal of sort of quick foods like instant ramen and some biscuits and tea and stuff like that. And basically kind of share the info back and forth that they've gotten. Kyoko lets Naegi and Asahina know that they are underwater in a duplicate facility. Meanwhile, Naegi informs Kyoko that, he's managed to contact the outside. Byakuya and a team are on the way. But does kind of comment that, given the amount of time that's passed, they should be here any minute. And starts to kind of worry a little bit that maybe something he did has screwed up everything. Again, wrestling a lot with the whole fact of, that he was given about him being around is going to lead to someone's death. and that he's pretty upset about this and starts getting pretty down on himself. He feels like he's sort of helpless in this situation, basically just waiting for Byakuya to come and rescue them. Um, and like in sort of this conversation, Kyoko actually takes off one of her gloves, which, if you remember from Danganronpa 1, is like a majorly significant thing for her because she has all like fucked up burned hands and is very sensitive about it, and holds his hand, basically telling him to believe in himself the way that the others believe in him. Even if he's not strong enough on his own to do these things, they're all there to help him and back him up. And this kind of bolsters Naegi a fair bit. We go back to striding through the halls with Goofus and also Goofus. Sakakura is concerned about Kyosuke's condition because Sakakura has taken a pretty bad beating from the fight with Gekko Gahara and, all the other stuff he's been going through recently. Sakakura, informs Kyosuke of all the people that he's come across that have died, Izuyoi and all of them. Kimura, all of that. Meanwhile, Kyosuke lets Sakakura know that Tengan is dead and that Kyosuke himself killed him. Sakakura is kind of initially shocked by this, but pretty quickly puts a positive spin on it, just kind of going, oh, well, if he's dead, then I guess, you're in charge of the Future Foundation now, and that's great, because that means we can, finally sort of start really putting forward our ideals and really, changing the world and doing the stuff that we wanted to do. Kyosuke starts sort of reminiscing about their times as students together with Chisa and sort of commenting about how easy it was all was then, because at that time all they really had to do was look to the future and believe that they could change the world. And meanwhile, all the older folks, all the people like, running the academy at that time, or all the adults around, kind of took care of making sure that things didn't fall apart while, Kyosuke and Sakakura and all them could still sort of dream about it. With the decent implication in the way that Kyosuke's talking that, it's not quite that easy anymore. It's not quite that simple. Sakakura, again, sort of declares that he's there the whole way to support Kyosuke's ideas and, work with him to achieve that future. And Kyosuke responds by gutting him with the heat katana. At least Sakakura will die with a warm belly, I guess.
Heyo.
As Sakakura, falls to the ground and sort of fades out, Kyosuke walks away, and to his credit, Kyosuke does seem genuinely upset at killing Sakakura, but is still in the sort of weird, brain-broken logic state of believing he somehow had to do this because of despair. We will find out why he's thinking that a bit later, but he definitely, at the time, is, cursing despair for making him kill Sakakura.
He literally drops the line, "Why did you make me kill him, despair?"
Yeah, it's a little odd, but definitely makes sense with a thing we find out later on. Back over with Naegi and his team. They're sort of going over what they know about those who died. Naegi relays the message he found next to Tengan, that he had written in his own blood about, entrusting the hope of the future to you. And, kind of says that it's, talks about how he feels like that was Tengan communicating with him. But Mitarai seems to take it a different way and seems to have some other sort of significance to him that's unclear. At this point, we finally check back in with Rurika, who actually had witnessed Kyosuke killing Sakakura. She was sort of hidden around a corner. She has some thoughts of betrayal, and has a flashback to Izuyoi closing up the secret door he found. He covered the door and set all the traps in the lounge in order to keep anyone else from finding the door, because Rurika had let him know that her NG code was that if anyone left, she would die. She kisses him, and uses that kiss to put a candy in his mouth, triggering his NG code and causing his death on purpose. She decided that she would betray him before he would betray her, a thing which she fully expected was inevitable to happen. Izuyoi is completely understanding, even though he never would betray her. She went to great effort to set up his death scene, despite her emotional turmoil, crying all the time as she was like dragging rocks around to set up the stuff he was against and like dragging his body over and all that. And she's still completely awful, and I don't care about her.
Yep.
Yeah, every time we learn more about her and Izuyoi, it actually makes me like care about them less and less. It's like the opposite of what character development should be.
I mean, in fairness, by this point, I actually do genuinely feel bad for Izuyoi, because I feel like to some extent, like, even though Ruruka may have thought she loved Izuyoi, I think she genuinely doesn't know what love is and was really just using him like she used everybody else. Whereas Izuyoi, I feel like, genuinely did love Ruruka, and basically caught the short end of the stick by loving someone who is a truly atrocious person.
Yeah.
So we cut back to Mitarai and Naegi and their group. Mitarai and Naegi are struggling to push some furniture in the way to make a barricade. Asahina basically comes over and easily shoves it across the room. They're closing themselves in because it's almost time for the next sleep period to begin. They're worried, though, because the attacker sort of clearly has complete knowledge and access to this facility, and may be able to unlock doors, or possibly has knowledge of like some secret passages or something that they can use to get around. Kyoko, once again, reassures Naegi to never give up on hope, no matter what happens. This revitalizes Naegi's optimism right before they are put to sleep. So the sleep cycle begins, and the next thing we see is that Ruruka has been killed. This is presumably by the attacker, because there is a Monokuma knife plunged into her heart, just like the other actual attacker kills. But yeah, we get this scene here with like a bunch of her candy stuffed in her mouth and strewn about, and her just sort of dead on the ground amidst a bunch of rubble. Naegi awakens from the sleep period and is happy that nobody has been killed, except that Kyoko has died from NG poisoning. Her code was passing the 4th time limit, with Naegi still being alive. This is how Monica knew that Naegi would cause one of the others to die, since Monica was fully aware of what everyone's NG codes were. As they are grieving Kyoko's death, Kyosuke comes over the intercom to taunt Naegi about the worthlessness of his philosophy again. Kyosuke, of course, knows that Kyoko has died because he found the device in Gekogahara that had everybody's NG codes on it.
Yeah, there was some kind of like phone lodged in her chest.
Yeah, it was like a smartphone kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he at this point challenges Naegi to essentially a one-on-one showdown in order to see, quote-unquote, whose hope is right. Naegi is officially done fucking around with this bullshit. And that is how Future Arc Episode 9 comes to its conclusion. Over in Despair, we resume the Despair arc, back under the statue of Izuru Kamakura, where Chiaki is confronting the new Izuru Kamakura about being Hajime Hinata. Kamakura, having had the entire Hajime personality erased as part of the project, does not recognize her. Junko gets tired of sort of seeing this back and forth scene between them and interrupts, introducing herself as, quote-unquote, the mastermind behind this whole affair. She goes into weird cutesy mode to try and convince Chiaki to watch the brainwashing video, but before she can even really get started, Chisa interrupts strongly with a fire extinguisher. Chisa tells Chiaki to take Nagito and get out of there, and she'll take care of this. After all, she is their teacher. I did want to note something about this particular scene that I found kind of interesting, as I kind of had to come in here and go frame by frame to get a good shot of this, since it happens very quickly when Chisa throws the fire extinguisher. Initially, the first time I watched through it, before I kind of went back to grab a screen, I thought Chisa actually nailed Junko with the fire extinguisher. She doesn't. Junko barely dodges out of the way, and the fire extinguisher actually hits the desk behind her. Coming out of the episode intro, Chiaki is taking Nagito towards the main course building, while Chisa remains confronting Junko and Kamakura. Junko says she was willing to let Chiaki go and Nagito go so easily because she came up with an even better plan now. She introduces herself to Chisa as the Super High School level Despair, and likewise introduces the Super High School level Hope, Izuru Kamakura, to Chisa. Chisa realizes that he's the result of the project she's been investigating and is shaken, possibly because she might also recognize him as Hajime. That's not entirely clear. Junko declares that today is the last day that Chisa and her class will remain themselves, and is sure that right now the 77th class is getting all fired up to come save their teacher. She's exactly right, of course, but Junko is already counting on them coming, and has a plan to devour their hope with her despair. Mikan shows up to the classroom with a beat-up Peko, and Peko immediately tells everyone to run.
Proving that Peko is probably the smartest person in this classroom right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's mostly low bar.
Back in the underground room, Junko introduces a successful example of brainwashing, and a generic student comes out. Junko tells him to show the teacher your despair, and, yeah, this is about the only screen cap I would feel comfortable actually putting in this slideshow. I'm not sure if anything more graphic than this, because God, does it get more graphic than this, might get us in trouble on Twitch.
Funimation actually blacks out the entire screen practically during this whole incident.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we need to actually show, anyways, to convey what goes on.
Chisa, of course, moves to try and stop him, but Mukuro arrives just in time and restrains her, and the student begins using the hacksaw to sever his own neck. The entire time he's doing so, he's screaming about how he doesn't want to do this, and, he wants to live, but clearly his despair has overtaken him, and he kills himself this way. Junko declares that the 77th class will become even more despairful than that, going even further than destroying their own bodies, and will even go so far as to slaughter those they love in the name of despair. Back in the classroom, everybody is planning to go take on Junko and Kamakura in order to save Chisa, but Nagito, at this point, actually revives from unconsciousness and tells them that it's all pointless. While the students may all have great talents, they are no match for the despair of Junko and Kamakura. Nagito says he's giving this warning out of concern for his classmates, and warns that they will all almost certainly die if they try to go through with this. The rest of the class is hesitant to believe this warning because it feels kinda overdramatic, but they are still seriously considering Nagito's words and thinking about backing down, until Chiaki speaks up to rally them. She gives sort of an impassioned speech about how much Chisa changed her life and, was always there for the whole class, and how, they wouldn't be the friends they are now if it weren't for Chisa, and so they, sort of owe it to her to go, rescue her. This resonates with all of them, as they declare their resolve to go, regardless of the danger. The imposter even goes so far as to remove the mask they are wearing, revealing maybe their real face? Who knows? It's kind of hard to say with the imposter, really.
I do actually like his design here. His quote-unquote, presumably real face.
Yeah.
There's only 4 other masks, and ultimately he's just a broom.
Nagito, meanwhile, reveals that he was not actually trying to dissuade them from going, but rather was doing this as sort of a test of strength of their hope. He fully expected his classmates to go through with saving Chisa, and would have been disappointed if his words were able to stop them, because he felt like, your hope is strong enough that it can overcome this. Nagito, too, is determined to go with them, but passes out again from his injuries as he attempts to get up. Sonya orders Kazuichi to carry him, and when it's questioned what good it will be to bring along an unconscious person, Gundam, in his very chuny way, basically implies that it's because of Nagito's, luck to a certain extent that they're all sort of here at this time and, in this place all together. And so even, it's worth having him along just in case his luck kind of conspires to make events work out for them. The class, thus resolved, sets off to save Chisa. Sakakura, meanwhile, is still trying to reach Chisa's cell phone, but obviously is still receiving no answer. Kyosuke is reviewing Junko's student file, and it seems that Junko was admitted to the school directly based on a board of directors decision, with no input allowed from Jin or Kizakura as far as her recruitment goes. Kyosuke, showing that he used to actually be capable of logical thought, says it's pretty clear that Junko is the one actually responsible for the killing game among the student council. Sakakura, armed with this information, heads off to apprehend her. Back in the underground room, Chisa is strapped to a chair being forced to watch the brainwashing video, Clockwork Orange style. She is resisting falling to despair with all her might, and Junko basically takes off, leaving Mukuro to oversee the remainder of Chisa's brainwashing. Consulting some notes, Mukuro pulls out some long needles to directly penetrate and modify Chisa's brain while she's still being forced to watch the video. The last thing Chisa thinks of before despair destroys her mind is Kyosuke, the image itself burning away from her memories. The 77th class, meanwhile, is rushing through the rain, trying to get to the underground facility in order to save Chisa. As they are reaching the gates, they are noticed by the Reserve Corps students who are still protesting at the gates. The Reserve Corps students behave in a perfectly normal, rational way. Certainly they haven't been influenced at all by the videos they watched. Nekomaru and Gundam step up to hold them off, while the others continue to head off for Chisa. Gundam does some straight-up Saint Seiya shit as he summons his 12 Zodiac generals here.
Yep.
Well, glad to see they used that reference, I guess.
Yeah.
There are so many references in this series.
Yeah, but this is like straight up like Saint Seiya, like posing as the constellation kicks in behind him. And his cosmos burns bright. It's elsewhere, Mitarai is being chased down by a bunch of the goo people as he desperately tries to escape. He had actually gotten away from the underground facility last episode when all the commotion was going on, but Junko wasn't just going to let it end that easily. She doesn't actually plan to kill him, though. He can just go. She really did just want to say goodbye to him, since she no longer really needs him. They finished making what she considers a complete enough form of the brainwashing video, and she's going to show it to everyone else in the 77th class. Mitarai is, of course, extremely upset about this, as he intended to use all those techniques he had learned in order to make the ultimate anime, which would bring hope to the world. He justifies his parts in Junko's plan by saying, he was threatened and forced to take part. And Junko kind of mockingly said, like, oh yeah, you were threatened. No one could possibly ever blame you. You certainly didn't have any real part in this of your own volition, kind of mocking him. And then going cold and emotionless sends him running off. Immediately after this happens, Sakakura shows up to confront Junko. Mitarai runs away through bushes and trees and ends up falling off a small cliff into the sea. As he falls through the water, he reflects on how he got here. He wanted to make the world better, but in the end he's going to be part of what causes it to fall to despair. Eventually he washes up on the shore and chastises himself for running away, trying to force himself to return and fight back against what's about to happen. But he can't even manage to gather up enough strength to crawl, and so gives up, collapsing once again to the ground. Back in the underground facility, the 77th class have arrived and are descending the stairs to find Chisa. They reason that if this secret facility is on school grounds like this, Junko must be working together with the school for whatever it is she's doing. Chiaki remains optimistic that they can succeed, but as they reach a landing, Mikan stops her as the rest of the class continues down. Mikan... Oh, I think I missed a screenshot there, regardless.
Yeah.
Mikan, having already been brainwashed to despair... Yeah, I just missed the screenshot. I was checking to make sure it wasn't just put in out of order. But yeah, Mikan was brainwashed to despair, shoves Chiaki through a secret panel. She's dropped into a hallway where Chiaki awakens to find Chisa. Chisa says that Kamakura let her go, and that he's not their enemy. Chiaki tells Chisa that everyone came to save her, and Chisa helps Chiaki to get up, saying that they need to find everyone because they're all in danger then. The last image of the episode is Chisa smiling, but it is no longer the kind, warm smile we've always seen on her before.
And then the episode title, which is a lie.
Is it?
Yes, the episode title is Chisayuki Zome Doesn't Smile. And we have seen her smile a number of times.
Well, yeah, but she doesn't now.
Yes.
Yeah, so that brings us then. We're going through these really quickly, actually.
Yeah. It doesn't help that I didn't really have any screenshots or anything, and a lot of the first 2 episodes of this week, the 9s of each series, are kind of set up for the 10s of their respective episodes, which are the big payoff.
Yeah, we did definitely run into that again, where we had a lot of setup in one episode and a lot of payoff in the other. Fortunately, this time it was only 1 episode of setup, unlike the last time this happened, where we basically had 2 episodes on each side that were just a whole bunch of setup. So we had like a whole week where very little actually happened.
Yeah. I will say there were a couple of Foley artists who really loved the brain poking scene.
Yeah, there was a lot of uncomfortable squelching.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, as the spare arc gets further on, uncomfortable is pretty much the modus operandi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, again, very interesting to me, because as I discussed before when we were talking about the student council killing game, it's actually kind of interesting because in the games themselves, we don't actually often get all that graphic depictions of violence. The most we see usually are like in the punishment executions, and even then, those are generally so cartoonishly over the top that it doesn't really impact that much, but these anime episodes have been very gruesome when they get violent.
It's kind of that added motion that we don't get for most of the light novels, and we also just don't see the direct scenes of violence either.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Whenever we see a scene of direct violence in Danganronpa 1 or 2, it's either like done in the visual novel style, where they're not actually like showing the violence being done, they're just showing the discussion, or we're seeing it in the really stylized, like evil manga panels kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we don't get a lot of just visceral beatdowns and violence that we're getting in Danganronpa 3.
Yeah, it's a little bothersome, honestly, because, like, well, I'm not going to go so far as to say by any means that Danganronpa is, like, my favorite game series or anything. Like, they're all-right games. I like them well enough. But, like, something about it, like, something about having the violence be significantly more visceral in the anime than it is in the games, honestly, like, puts me off the anime a lot. Like, I am definitely not enjoying Danganronpa 3 as an anime nearly as much as I enjoy the games.
Yeah. Danganronpa 3 has a very, very specific style that it goes for, and even the violence in the series lends itself towards that style, with the pink blood and the kind of cartoonish way that it expresses violence. It still has consequences in the story. These people are still dying, but it's a very exaggerated and sort of out there thing, to the point where you can detach a little and not have to face, the gruesomeness of what is really going on. Since people are being, like, boiled in tempura batter and turned into butter and shit like that. But we're not seeing it. In Danganronpa 3, it's a markedly distinct style, even in the future arc, which still involves a killing game of some kind. It's still a remarkably... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just none of the deaths have any whimsy to them. This is just the future arc is pure on violence, and the despair arc is pure on brutality.
Yeah. It's kind of notable that, like, all the in the games in 1 and 2, both the murders that took place and the executions all had some level of, like, I guess whimsy is a good word for it, but there was some level to them of, like, sort of dissociation from the direct violence of it, like even
sort of a black comedy to it.
Yeah, like even Sayaka's death, which was, like, probably realistically one of the more directly brutally violent in the first game, was just like she was in the bathroom and, like, blood was splattered everywhere, and it was kind of almost cartoonishly over the top, that death scene. Whereas, like, in Future Arc, it's literally just like, oh no, everyone just gets stabbed directly in the fucking heart and is splayed out. It's like, Jesus, like...
Or
directly in
poisoned
the
to
heart,
death in a very
brutalized,
graphic...
cut in half. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the poison, which is just incredibly graphic.
Yeah, they bleed
Yeah.
out of their
Yep.
eyes and mouth and, like, turn purple and so, like, yeah. No,
And-
it's all very... almost like it doesn't quite get to the level, but it's like approaching that idea of like those kind of like gore porn movies like Hostel or Saw, you know, where even Saw, though I wouldn't even put that far. Saw almost veers more towards the normal Danganronpa style, because a lot of the deaths in Saw are just fucking cartoonish.
Well, it also even we saw shades of this in Danganronpa 2 at the end, because at the end trial we actually got told what the super high school ultra level despairs did.
Yeah.
Like, not the full extent of what they did, but we got shown brief snippets of, oh, this is what you guys did when you turned into despairs. And we were all rolling our eyes and going, okay, man, this is a little fucking extra. Like, all the horrible things that the despairs did were so ludicrously edgy and over the top and didn't, like, fit with the tone of the rest of the game that I know at least 3 of us were just like, okay, like, really? You had to go that over the top for it? We could have gotten the gist with something a little less, like, cartoonishly violent. Or not cartoonishly violent, but a little...
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying. But,
Yeah.
But even then, we were like, man, that's a little out there for Danganronpa. And this entire series is that same level of out there, because it's very clear they had an idea of what they wanted to happen during this whole chunk of time in the world, but I still think not showing it, like still having some mystery or letting the person's or the player's mind fill in the blanks of exactly what terrible things happened, looks far better.
I agree, especially considering the episode we haven't gotten to yet, but we'll talk about that afterwards.
Yeah. I think part of the reason why the game, like, it's a level of absurdity. You reach a point where it's so absurd that it just doesn't feel real, so it's clearly just a video game. Whereas a lot of the deaths that we have seen in anime so far, these are perfectly reasonable, like, people die when they're stabbed with a blade.
People die when they're killed.
But
Sorry,
no, it's like no, fair enough.
Yeah,
but it's like the time where we saw the student council go at it. All of those were, yes, we understand how that works. That's a realistic type of death.
Yeah, there's nobody being strapped to a motorcycle that's set to go round and round so fast that they literally like liquefy.
Yeah, it's kind of the brutality of Junko and her sister go from like the kind of black comedy of their initial introduction to like full on like gory nonsense practically.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk a bit more about this, I think, when we get to the end wrap up, because as Vince mentioned, we have another episode coming up that very, very typifies this kind of level of violence, and I think actually provides a very interesting parallel to the games in how it's presented. But we'll talk about that more when we get there. For now, we are on to Future Arc Episode 10. We begin with a flashback to the events after Naegi's execution during the killing school life, when Naegi got dropped down into the trash pile, and Kyoko came down to find him. As the memory sort of fades out, we return to the present with Naegi, Asahina, and Mitsurai crying over Kyoko's dead body. We're shown again Kyosuke's taunting and challenge, and Naegi steeling himself to prove Kyosuke wrong and not give up on his hope, even in this terrible situation. After all, it's precisely what Kyoko told him to do. We come out of the intro right where we were. It kind of makes sense, really. We don't exactly have many other characters left to switch around to. Naegi's...
So, from what I remember, there is one thing on that countdown timer in the intro, or not the countdown, the body count timer in the intro was a 6, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go over that later.
I also made note of it.
One thing I
Yeah.
will note about that is 6 is inaccurate based on what we know, because right now we only know of 4 people that are alive. However, I will say this much. I do feel like at least one of those inaccuracies could probably be explained by Gecko Gahara, since she is exactly as alive now as she was at the start of the game.
Yes, although that also means like it's really depends on that countdown type of
Yeah.
thing, and
Yeah.
and obviously even taking into account Gecko Gahara, there's a number disparity.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that includes Yasuhiro, because the number was also incorrect in the previous episode.
Maybe, but I
Actually,
doubt it. I think the
Does
number is based on the bracelets, actually.
which would make sense.
Okay.
Which would mean that Gecko Gahara, I think, was a part of the initial count at least, and
Yes.
I haven't been following this too closely, anyways, when it comes to the numbers. Just that this one was of particular note because it's obviously off, or
It's been,
rather, it's probably on, but there's something we don't know.
to the best of my knowledge, that count has been accurate to everything we know, except for the past 2 episodes here, except for episodes 9 and 10.
Yeah.
I again have not specifically paid attention to it, but like for a long, I mean, honestly, for like 3 episodes, nobody fucking died. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like it was at like 10 for like 3 episodes, and that was completely accurate. But yeah, yeah. So Nagi stands up and begins walking away, basically saying he has to go see Kyosuke and end this. He asks Mitarai to stay with Asahina. Mitarai asks how Naegi can be over the death of his friend so quickly, and Naegi counters that of course he hasn't gotten over it. However, Kyoko kept her NG code hidden from Naegi on purpose because she knew that if Naegi found out about it, he'd do something dumb. She, like so many others, has entrusted Naegi with her hope, and so he has no choice but to move forward. Asahina, still crying, tells him to go, and it seems like Mitarai may finally begin to understand what it means to have been a survivor of the killing school life. As soon as he's away from the others, Naegi begins crying again, but continues on his path regardless. As he travels through the hallway, he finds the split-in-half body of the robot Gecko Gahara. He is shaken, but proceeds nonetheless. Kyoko's words continue to repeat in his head, and he continues on. In the control room, Kyosuke waits for Naegi to arrive. He has a memory of a time previously with Chisa when she had arrived too late to save a bunch of children. She was distraught and asked what they could do to eliminate despair from the world. This is what hardened Kyosuke's resolve to realize his ideals of destroying despair. At this point, we sort of switch back and forth a bit between Kyosuke and Naegi, each thinking about what their hope truly is. Kyosuke's is a destructive hope, the achieving of hope by eliminating all despair, even if it means he's the only one left. Naegi, meanwhile, believes in a spreading hope, a hope that you feel and inspire others to hold that same hope. We get some more absolutely fucking beautiful shot composition as Naegi arrives to the room where Kyosuke is, silhouetted against the wall as Naegi declares that he will not hesitate anymore. Kyosuke says that he will eliminate Naegi, while Naegi says that there is no point in killing each other, and asks once again for Kyosuke to help him end this game. Kyosuke again declares that Naegi's words are worthless, and rushes him with the heat katana. Naegi evades and runs off through a doorway. Kyosuke breaks through a glass wall to pursue, lending more evidence to the theory that his NG code is that he can't go through doors. Either that, or he's just an overdramatic bitch. I suppose both are a possibility.
It can be both.
Naegi has vanished off down a hallway. Kyosuke assumes, attempting to lure him to a particular place. Back with the others, Mitarai is wondering how it is that Naegi can be so strong in his convictions, and why he himself is so weak. Asahina, meanwhile, seems to notice something about Kyoko. Naegi has drawn Kyosuke into a room filled with smoke and set the sprinkler system off. The room fills with water, and Naegi tosses live wires into the puddle. Kyosuke counters this by stabbing his heat katana into the floor, which causes the water to sort of evaporate around him. He also uses the dart launcher he took from Tengon to shoot Naegi in the leg. Kyosuke escaped getting electrocuted by leaping up and hanging onto a cable from the ceiling. As the smoke clears, Naegi has run off again, but now he's leaving a blood trail from his injured leg. Kyosuke sort of tracks Naegi down a hallway, goes to turn a corner, and Naegi leaps from hiding in some rubble and attempts to hit Kyosuke with a fire extinguisher, but Kyosuke already knew he was there because of the blood trail. He kicks Naegi in the stomach, sending him to the ground, and Naegi attempts to use the fire extinguisher to produce a smoke screen. But the extinguisher is defective and doesn't fire off. He hurls the extinguisher at Kyosuke, who knocks it away with his sword, right into a crevice where the pressure builds up and launches it off like a rocket, hitting Kyosuke in the back of the head. Never underestimate super high school level luck, motherfucker.
It is, I will say, this is actually a really interesting fight scene to watch, because it's very clear that, like, if Kyosuke can just get one good hit in, he's gonna fucking murder Naegi. Naegi doesn't have any kind of, like, combat skill. He's just fighting on desperation and weird tricks and luck. But it's still shot like it's an action scene.
Well, and I think a lot of it, too, is especially based on what we're kind of about to find out. It's very interesting because I don't think Naegi is actually trying to succeed with any of his attacks as much as he is really just trying to get Kyosuke to keep following him so he can set up the situation he needs. He's very heavily relying on his super high school level luck in a way that we have almost never actually seen Naegi do. Who we've seen do that all the time is actually Nagito.
Yeah, Naegi's luck is very much usually the coincidental type. He doesn't seem to believe in it for the most part. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, but here it seems like he is very intentionally, like, not so much that he's solely relying on his luck. He, like, has kind of a plan about what he wants to do here, but mostly the only reason the plan is working is because of his luck.
He's not doing the crazy nonsense that Naegi would do, like playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets.
Nagito, yeah.
Or Nagito, yeah. Like, he doesn't directly usually invoke his luck. It generally is just something that comes along with what he's doing.
He generally just tries something desperate, and then his luck kicks in.
And covers up for his ineptitudes.
Yeah.
So, in the sort of smoke screen generated by the fire extinguisher that's now sort of spraying everywhere, Naegi charges Kyosuke and tackles him. But when the fire extinguisher gas sort of clears, Kyosuke is left able to get back to his feet, while Naegi is flat on his back, splayed out on a big piece of rubble. Kyosuke raises his katana to go for a killing blow, but stops just before striking flesh. Naegi declares that Kyosuke can't kill him. Turns out, this particular place is actually the same place they ended up before when Kyosuke was first chasing Naegi, way back towards the beginning of the killing game. Naegi lays out the thought process of all the past events, which leads to the revelation that Kyosuke's NG code is, in fact, that he cannot open doors. So he can't kill Naegi here, otherwise he won't be able to leave this room, since the only exit is through a closed door. Naegi, using the fact that he's basically shut down Kyosuke's ability to kill him as he wants to, tries to leverage that into forcing Kyosuke into talking things out. Kyosuke, however, has no interest in talking it out and continues to accuse Naegi of being part of despair as he throws him around the room. Naegi, of course, refutes this accusation that he's been infected with despair. He continues to say that they should all be able to work together. Kyosuke again reiterates that his hope is wiping out all despair, no matter who or what he has to sacrifice. Naegi counters that...
I'm going to kill you all until despair is dead.
Yeah. Naegi basically counters saying that that's not hope. Just because there isn't despair doesn't mean that there will be hope. Hope is not the absence of despair, but its own thing that has to be created. We do finally now get to hear what it was that Tengan actually told Kyosuke back when they were talking about the attacker. Tengan told Kyosuke that there isn't only one attacker, and that it could be said that, quote-unquote, the attacker is every future Foundation member present. According to Tengan, even Chisa had been tainted by despair. We find out that Kyosuke actually knew this. He had found pictures showing that Chisa was the one who killed all the children in that flashback earlier. He wonders when it was that she first became tainted by despair, and again reiterates his resolve to get rid of all despair, even if it's a memory. This infuriates Naegi, who tells him that he can't get rid of Chisa, even if she fell to despair. Naegi says even if Kyoko had turned to despair and betrayed everyone, even if he had to kill her in order to stop her, he still would not have regretted meeting her and the good memories they had made. This actually causes Kyosuke to pause, because Naegi's unflagging optimism triggers in him memories of the same kind of optimism from Chisa. Naegi finally managed to actually make it through to Kyosuke, who lets out a roar of fury and sadness at what he has lost. He sits down, knowing that his hope has been defeated, and his eyes have returned to normal as he cries and asks Naegi when they went wrong. Asahina
when
and
you
Mitra
started killing everyone.
Yeah.
Go on.
At this point, Asahina and Mitra interrupt, coming through the door and revealing that they found Kyoko's notebook, and within it was the identity of the attacker. This is the last thing we see before the credits roll, and after the credits, we see the fleet of Future Foundation's ships still approaching Jabberwock Island.
And like a ship kind of drift by, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot that kind of went down in that episode, and I have to admit, honestly, as like it was hard for even me to believe it when I realized it after watching that episode. The episode actually made me empathize with Kyosuke.
Yeah, kinda.
They actually did a pretty good job on that sort of arc there. Like, it was just right at that end there when he started having those memories of Chisa come back, and like that shout he gives, that scream was just so visceral. Like,
It's strange, but the very fact that he kind of like broke from the information that he got from Tengon, and you realize at least that's what's been happening past that point at least, strangely enough makes his logic work for that part of the series more than it did at the beginning.
I mean, it does help that he's got the memory of Chisa asking him to destroy Despair. And
Yeah.
it kind of set him on the path of the only way to bring hope was, remove Despair entirely.
yeah, and so this also ties in a little bit to what I was talking about earlier, where his whole, like, brain-broken logic of having to kill Sakakura and Despair making him do it ties into what it was that Tengon told him. Because if he was truly believing what Tengon said, that, basically every Future Foundation member there had been tainted by Despair just by virtue of being dragged into this killing game, then under that logic, he would have no choice but to also kill Sakakura, because Sakakura, too, was harboring Despair, and his vision of hope was the elimination of Despair. Like, it's not good logic by any means, but it is consistent within its own logic there.
Unlike the initial logic it was upper hander, which still does not really gel, even taking into account anything Chisa might have said or done.
Yeah, no, he started off from a bad place, definitely went into a worse place because of what Tengon told him, but now does genuinely seem to have realized that he's been wrong. Which is kind of interesting, because he definitely seemed, entirely zealous throughout all of this. And it's very interesting. I mean, obviously, it's a, intense situation. It's incredibly stressful. There's a lot going on. So it's understandable that a lot built up to bring him to this point where he has broken and realized he was wrong this whole time. But it's still not actually a thing you see very often from this sort of character archetype in an anime.
Yeah.
No, they generally, at best, have like one or two passing words before they die in some dramatic nonsense scene.
Yeah, the fact that he has, like, realized that he was wrong and they do all need to work together to get out of here and, like, the killing needs to stop before he actually died is pretty remarkable, all told. But with that, we come to our final episode of this session. Despair Arc Episode 10. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
So this episode resumes where we left off, with Chisa and Chiaki heading down this sort of weird, like, techno hallway that Chiaki got dumped into. Chisa assures Chiaki that they're almost there, and they'll meet up with everyone soon. Chiaki is reasonably worried, but Chisa's reassurance cheers her up. Returning from the intro, we find ourselves back out in the pouring rain, and a huge pile of beat-to-shit people that Sakakura has taken out, before Junko managed to get a shot in with her baseball bat that knocked him down. Junko starts over-dramatically mocking him for his unrequited love for Chisa, except with her super analysis, she was able to figure out that he's actually really in love with Kyosuke. Well, super analysis and taking candid photos of him in his bedroom staring longingly at a photo of Kyosuke.
By super analysis, I mean I hired a detective.
Yeah, pretty much. She at this point threatens to reveal this secret to Kyosuke, kind of taunting Sakakura about, oh, what do you think he would do if, he knew about this? And basically forces Sakakura to beg her not to tell Kyosuke. However, in exchange for not telling him, Junko wants Sakakura to betray Kyosuke's trust and tell Kyosuke that Junko was innocent of the suspicions he had. Sakakura, while initially resistant, eventually relents and agrees when he realizes that Junko really would just tell Kyosuke about his secret. With that, Junko heads off to the quote-unquote main dish, saying that Sakakura here was only an appetizer.
This is your daily reminder that the Danganronpa writers have an extreme problem with homophobia.
I mean, it's more of a cultural Japanese thing. Japanese culture is not exactly terribly gay friendly.
Like, it's better now than it used to be, but it's still not good.
Yeah, even as bad as the United States can sometimes be about it, we've done a lot towards progressing towards making it more like commonplace and mainstream acceptable. Like in Japan, it is still very much not. This is not by any means to excuse the writers of Danganronpa from this, but at the same time, it is still very much a cultural norm over there that, homosexuals, transsexuals, all, trans people, all of that, transgender, all of that, are all treated either as aberrations or jokes, and not in a good way as far as jokes go. Like, it's even some really pretty good series like One Piece kind of fall into that trap a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's particularly egregious in Danganronpa. Is the only reason I bring it up and don't just go, oh yeah, this is another case of anime having that glaring issue. It's especially prevalent. Sakakura here is the best of the 4 characters I can name off the top of my head that we know are LGBT. And the other 3 I can remember are both mentally unstable and or Teru, who is a piece of, horrible shit, as we've established.
Well, yes, Teru is absolutely a piece of shit. We will see that again in, 5 minutes here. Not even.
Yep.
I think it's literally the next slide I have is Teru being an utter piece of shit. That being said, I will say there is one that I think you may be I don't think you're necessarily forgetting the character, but I think you're forgetting the way it in and of itself is approached. And that is Chihiro from the first game, wherein Chihiro being either, a cross-dresser or trans, it's never really explicitly laid out, is not played for laughs or anything like that, and in fact, for the most part, when that particular twist is revealed within the trial about their murder, the biggest thing about it was literally a lot of that murder was faked to cover up and try and protect Chihiro's secret, even.
Yep.
Yeah.
True. I was forgetting that particular instance.
Like, that was actually remarkably sensitive for that subject within a Japanese series, and was never really, basically, Chihiro, even when it comes up in Ultra Despair Girls, and this is why I think Chihiro is intended to be trans, Chihiro is basically never treated as male. Chihiro is always addressed and like either ambiguously or as female.
Yeah, the word the father uses is specifically just "my child."
My child, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, regardless, it is a thing that comes up a few times throughout the series, but is never handled super well. But Chihiro's was at least better than most of the others.
Yes.
Anyways, back with the rest of the 77th class, who are also traveling through one of those weird techno hallways. Mikan hurries as best she can to catch up with them. When they ask her where Chiaki is, Mikan says that Chiaki had twisted her ankle and is resting in a room a ways back, but will catch up with them as soon as she can. Teru Teru continues to be gross, and continues to be immediately punished for it. This is a wall panel sliding out to slam into Teru Teru, and it is revealed behind it that Gundam and Nekomaru have caught up with the rest of the class. They had no real problems dealing with the Reserve Corps students, as you would probably expect from Nekomaru, and it's, not completely expected from Gundam per se, but we also haven't really seen any evidence that Gundam is not capable of fighting people.
Considering his ability to tame like bears, there's also the possibility he just called other animals.
Yeah. It turns out that Mikan basically like texted them to let them know where the rest of the class was so that they could meet up. Now reunited, they continue on down the hallway in order to rescue Chisa. Coming upon a large, ostentatious red door, Mikan pushes the button to open it. Meanwhile, Chisa and Chiaki come to a similar door and likewise open it to find an elevator beyond. Before they get in the elevator, Chisa tells Chiaki all about how she's like so happy that Chiaki managed to bring the whole class together and unite them as one. She goes on for quite a bit about how she's such a great class representative and how all the happy school life of the 77th class is due to her hard work. She then shoves Chiaki in the elevator and sends her into a descent, Chisa's eyes having gone sort of crazy and swirly hypno style. As she reaches the bottom of the elevator, Chiaki finds herself greeted on a screen by Junko, explaining that Chisa has already been brainwashed by the video of despair. She goes on to explain the nature of the video to Chiaki, but also says that she's still fine-tuning it. Junko declares that Chiaki will be the one who will help her complete the video of despair into its final form. We cut to the trial room. I think we all know what's about to happen here, to some extent. Junko appears on a screen, and we get to see the first ever punishment trial style with its victim, Chiaki. She's been put in a RPG-style dungeon full of traps, and has to sort of try and make her way out. As she proceeds, Junko taunts her. Chiaki is determined to make it back to everyone, but is clearly struggling as she gets hit by several fairly damaging traps. Chiaki maintains hope in her classmates, though, which is exactly Junko wants to show being crushed. So this is where what I was talking about, where we get some interesting parallels, sort of to what we've seen in the past, because we've obviously seen, punishments and executions before within the games, and again, they're all generally fairly sort of cartoonish and not really that particularly brutal. I mean, I guess probably the most brutal one realistically was like Spears of Gungnir. But here, it's really honestly pretty uncomfortable to watch as Chiaki like goes through these hallways and gets like hit with like spears and ball bearings and like steps on a plate and gets a spike through her foot, but she has to like keep going on in obvious like intense pain.
And just barely avoids being thrown into the Shadow Realm by buzzsaws coming out of the wall.
Yeah, like buzzsaws and like an Indiana Jones boulder coming down the hall, and like it's all really, really uncomfortable. Again, like the violence in this series is definitely more intense and direct than what we got in the games, even in a situation that is analogous to what we've seen in the games previously.
Yeah, the shots are all straight on and linger. There's no like angle work to cut off any gore that might not make it onto camera otherwise. There's
There's a little bit of like the blackout censorship, but that's about it, and even that is not quite as much as we've seen in previous instances.
Yeah, usually if it was like a more brutal death like Leon's was, it was you don't actually directly see what's happening to the body. It's but you basically know what's happening to the body from an off-camera shot.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is like this is a person being basically slowly like injured over time,
tortured to death. She's being tortured to death.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. Like outright. Like there's no dancing around it. We are literally watching a high school girl being tortured to death, and it's genuinely uncomfortable.
Yeah,
which is part of why you may have noticed me before switch to a next screenshot and then back. And I think I initially had taken a screenshot here, and then when I was putting the slideshow together, I was like, man, even looking at this is kind of gross. Like, I'm just not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the 77th class is being forced to watch on helpless as they've all been paralyzed by the video they're watching. Junko appears once again to Chiaki, who says she'll give her 10 seconds for, quote, a miracle to occur, but almost instantly goes back on it, saying she's wholly fickle and that a miracle will never occur. As the 77th class continues to watch on with their eyes, going swirly with the brainwashing impact of the video, they're all sort of slowly being emotionally crushed by what they're being forced to witness. Nikon, already broken by the brainwashing, is excited by the events occurring and the fact that they will all essentially be quote-unquote classmates again, as they will all be driven to despair just like she was. Junko declares that Chiaki's death will fill everyone with despair because she is the one that brought them all together in the first place. Chiaki continues to believe in her classmates, and it seems like she may actually manage it as she finds a door marked goal. As she opens it, behind it she sees all of her classmates waiting for her. It is, of course, a trick as Chiaki steps forward to Chisa and is immediately pierced on innumerable spikes. This basically completely breaks the 77th class, as narrated by Nagito, who begins laughing madly and declaring that Chiaki has become a stepping stone to hope. Junko declares that they have now become like her. They will always seek despair. It is the only great, exciting emotion they can feel. As Chiaki's corpse is dropped to the floor, Junko says she is excited to work with her upperclassmen. We are left with an empty trial room with a stuffed Monokuma doll sitting on the judge's chair. As Chiaki's last bits of life fade away, Kamakura approaches her. She again calls out to him as Hajime, and he asks if that's who he was before. Even after Kamakura tells her that all his past memories were completely deleted, Chiaki holds out hope that he can still remember. She struggles to get up as she tries to encourage him to remember, because nothing is impossible for him. As she slips in her own blood and falls back to the ground, she laments that she won't be able to help him. Kamakura is confused, that even in her state she would try and help and protect someone. She says that of course she would, because she loves all her classmates. Slowly, lamenting that she won't be able to remain classmates with everyone, and that she wanted to play games with Hajime just one more time. Chiaki dies. Kamakura picks up her hairpin and begins crying, for reasons he can't possibly understand. So I gotta be real, I was not actually prepared to be emotionally invested in Danganronpa 3.
Yeah.
This episode fucked me up. Like, this episode genuinely, like, I finished watching this episode at, like, must have been maybe 11:30 last night, and, like, getting the screen caps on and stuff, and I was just like, I need to, like, do something happy and joyous now. We went and did some, like, 14, and then I seriously watched, like, happy anime until, like, 2 in the morning. I watched some, like, Ben and Yod shit. Because I was just like, yeah, this legitimately did not leave me in a good place.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, this is about one of the most uncomfortable episodes of anime I've watched in ever. Yeah, as Josh said, just the torturing to death of a character that's
I mean, of any character, honestly, but
well, yeah, of any
in this
character at
in this
all, but
particular
yeah.
one, like especially a character that A is like a teenager and B has but done nothing but be like the nicest, kindest, really kind of most innocent character in the whole series so far.
Yeah.
And like again, I in a
I mean,
broad swath knew this was coming.
I fully expected something along these lines in this series. I just didn't expect it to be this blunt and brutal.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like I knew that Chiaki died during this series and like that it was as part of like the first punishment game. I did not realize the depiction of it was this like graphic and drawn out and just it is just like that. I think is what honestly got me the most was like it didn't obviously come through that much with me, you know, describing it out in text here. Like you have to understand this punishment scene was literally the entire back half of the episode.
Yeah, it's 12 almost unbroken minutes.
Yeah, it literally starts
beating down and murdering a teenage girl.
Yeah, it literally starts at the eye catch in the middle of the episode. We actually get the different art style, which I thought was actually an interesting touch, as they show like Chiaki in the like traditional like punishment game art style, and
Yeah,
literally
the
as well, no, even before the 8-bit, the actual like because if you remember in the games, there's like the regular character art style, but then there's the like more detailed, almost like painted like style that we see the executions in. We actually see a shot of Chiaki in that style before the eye catch. Then we come back from the eye catch, and it starts the whole like 8-bit little punishment game thing. And literally, basically from that point until credits of this episode, is switching between her walking through this dungeon being tortured slowly and the 77th class being forced to watch it and basically slowly breaking. It's very uncomfortable, and like I said, like I
also go ahead.
I am honestly, given what happened here, genuinely kind of thankful that there's only one episode of Despair Arc left and not two, because if they need to escalate it from here, like I do not want to know what would happen if they had to escalate it for 2 more episodes.
I do not look forward to the next episode of Despair Arc because I'm pretty sure it still kind of continues along these lines.
Yeah, kind of in keeping with what we had talked about earlier when we were wrapping up episode 9, I do not feel like Danganronpa earned the right to do this scene. There are certain types of media where you could, for however gross that it would remain, get away with a scene like this. Danganronpa is not one of those media.
I don't think it's necessarily as much earned the right as this is not the kind of scene I would expect from Danganronpa, if that makes sense. Like, obviously I would expect a punishment game, I would expect an execution. I would not expect it to be this way.
It feels like someone who kind of has an idea of what Danganronpa is supposed to be, but it's kind of a Flanderization of the video games in a way.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of the most extreme, or it's taken to a more extreme than they usually do.
Yeah, so that being said, though, I think we're kind of entering the point now where we can have sort of general discussion across the 4 episodes we watched this time, as well as if there's really any point left at this point, theorizing on who the attacker might be in future arc. Though I think we're kind of past the point of that being any real point.
Yeah, kind of. There's other twists, but it's kind of hard to discuss because it's more of a general overarching what the hell is actually going on, but that's a lot of theorizing at this point.
Yeah.
Especially with the, like, obviously extra character at the very least somewhere or something. One other thing. So one other thing about this prequel that does actively take away from the games is the super hypnotism route is also kind of lame.
Yeah,
that is a personal take. If you're fine with it, that's fine. But yeah, it's one of those things. it's one of those things where Junko comes across as kind of this very charismatic manipulator, and that's kind of I understand like how you can't have well, one, this series doesn't have enough time for to do that with all members of the 77th class,
Yeah.
or anything like that. But it's like in that respect, it feels kind of like a rush job. But it's like I don't know if I'd much rather see that, but it would feel like it'd make more sense to this series, especially given the last two episodes. I actually don't think I want to see that anymore, considering where this has led. But
so what I will say in that regard is, first off, it's yeah, I do agree, like it, because it's the like super effective hypnotism you really only get in fiction. But like that's Danganronpa has always verged just enough into the realm of magical realism that I don't feel like that's too out of place. And I will
that's
say,
not my problem with it. It's just it's one of those things of like it feels like Junko kind of, or it feels like the hypnotism's never brought up in the first two games, like at all. It more felt like they were telling us that Junko was just charismatic and manipulative enough to just make these people do what she wanted for the most part.
yeah, I could see that. The one other point I did want to bring up is, and it's not actually something that comes up explicitly in the games, but is in other supplemental material. Even before Danganronpa 3, the anime happened, in some of like the side story manga and stuff like that, it was actually established that there was a brainwashing element to the tragedy. So this is something that has been canon from before this. So
that does gel a little bit more with like the complete nonsense of like the entire reserve course committing suicide that we heard of in Danganronpa 2, for example, or just the world being in shit in general. So
oh boy, look forward to Despair episode 11 because I'm pretty sure that's what's coming.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right. I regret there not being a 4x speed on the website I'm using.
Yeah.
That also probably took a little bit of the edge off the whole Chiaki execution as well. For me, was just running at a double speed.
Yeah, no, it was pretty rough, especially for me, who I don't even get to really watch it straight through because I have to stop to make notes and take screenshots as I'm doing this. So for me, what was 12 straight minutes actually ended up being about 25 minutes.
Oh, as someone who's had to edit footage of and audio of us doing random stuff, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to that.
Yeah, I do think that contributes a lot towards how hard this stuff hits me. Is like I've like every single one of these screenshots you see in this slideshow. You have to realize I spent at least 30 seconds staring at those screenshots.
Yeah, you're getting the Facebook moderator experience from having to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, so it definitely, like, not to discount the impact it may have had on others, but it definitely, like, I think a lot of the impact it had on me was just because I have to keep pausing and sometimes going back to review a scene to make sure I get the screenshot I want from it and stuff. Like, it's a lot. And I wish I could be doing this with a happier series.
Maybe we should do this with a happier series.
Oh, I'm never doing this fucking again. If we ever do another, like, anime review like this, somebody else gets to do the fucking slideshows.
That's reasonable, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, so does anyone else have any other theories about anything that's going on, either Future Arc or Despair Arc side? Any stuff they want to discuss? Anything that's sort of come up that they want to talk about?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna say that Mitarai is still very suspect on the Future Arc side.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that, especially given what we've seen now in Despair Arc, where like he acknowledges his role in what happens within the tragedy, and like kind of hates himself for being too cowardly and weak to stop it.
Oh, also, I want to throw shade on your three favorite characters of Ruruka, Izayoi, and Seiko, and say their entire existence in the series was kind of pointless.
Absolutely. That entire like character, like now that all three of them have died, like what would have happened? Like what would have really realistically been any significantly different were they not here?
The series would have been about a few episodes shorter.
Realistically, this series, if they actually made it like 10 episodes, did flashback for the important bits that happened in Despair Arc, you probably would miss nothing, and as a matter of fact, cut out a lot of gore porn.
Yeah, but it's like most of the other characters at least contributed something to like the overarching plot and story. Ruruka, Izuyoi, and Kimura, for the most part, were effectively useless. I will say there is one
Yeah,
thing I know
I
about
wanted to wait
Kimura's
it-
role.
I-
There's one thing I know about Kimura's role in all of this that technically does make her existence of some importance, but that one aspect could easily have been handled by some other, like, Deus Ex Machina.
Or literally her just existing off screen for all it fucking matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was waiting until the conclusion of like all of that nonsense before really making a judgment on it, but yeah, that was completely useless.
Yeah, like, at the very least, even within that, like, there is very little necessity for the existence of, at the least. Even accepting what I know, advanced knowledge-wise, that means that there is actually a purpose to Kimura's existence in the series. There is no justification or real reason for Ruruka and Izuyoi. There just isn't.
Yeah.
It was to have
No.
two more characters in the Killing Game, basically.
Yeah, it's sticking to formula even when you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I will absolutely not disagree with that assessment of, like, in the long run, for the most part, those characters were entirely fucking pointless.
They were used to basically pad out both series.
Yeah, pretty much. Krampus, it sounded like you had something you wanted to bring up.
So, in a pivot from talking about how much we've come to dislike this anime, one of the things I do like about this anime, and kind of about Danganronpa in general, Makoto Naegi is one of those few people who I believe could talk down damn near any opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to
yeah.
I want to clarify. I actually enjoy Future Arc for the most part.
Yeah,
I think
think
Future Arc is
Future Arc-
actually a really good anime.
I think Future Arc is fine. It's a little bit it's a little bit padded, especially for my taste. But
Yeah, it could be better. It could be more concise.
it could
but
be
like,
trimmed, but as it's actually gotten on with its plot, it's definitely matured. Whereas Despair Arc has kind of gone in the opposite direction because it has embraced its name a little bit too closely.
Yeah, it's like, on the one hand, it is kind of interesting to see, the events that we've only heard kind of talked about vaguely within the games and get more specific details about them. But if I'm being totally honest, if they were going to do, like, some sort of prequel arc, I would have honestly preferred if they left the entire, like, events leading up to the tragedy out of it and literally just had, like, so you have Future Arc, which is, the whole, killing, the final Killing Game going on, and, Monokuma Hunter, whatever you fuck you want to call it.
Yeah.
And, like, all of this going on and being sort of the conclusion to the whole thing. And to juxtapose against that and make it sort of mitigate the impact of that, just have a daily slice of life anime with the 77th class as the other half, like an actual like comedy slice of life anime.
I do get what they. Yeah, that would be actually great in general. Just like never even have it get to the general bad shit that happens later.
Yeah, just have it be like the first like 6 months or whatever of them, being a class and like coming together and just like goofing around and doing dumb shit and fucking Gundam being a chuny and Terra being a perv.
Just continue the first like half dozen episodes or something. Before
it was like the first 3 or 4 episodes there.
They clearly want to do that because every game includes a mode like that where there is no killing game and you can just like do a visual novel style like slice of life game with these characters.
Or occasionally when you want to just cut the when they want to like do a tonal shift but still not at the same time, like as I pointed out later, a like Mukuro Junko black comedy where they're just going around doing nonsense would also be entertaining in its own little way.
Yeah.
One thing I was actually disappointed with Despair Arc was I was hoping we were going, like, we saw bits of it with finding out about why Ruruka, Izuyoi, and Mura got expelled. I wanted to see more stuff involving some of these other characters that are in Future Arc, like seeing their background.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem with that is that most of them had graduated from Hope's Peak by the time of Despair Arc and were off doing other things.
There's a bit of that. There's also kind of just the structure they had in mind for the series, which in and of itself, I actually kind of like the experimentation. I just don't think it works very well. Of and the reason why the watch order is what it is because episodes do directly tie from one into another.
Yeah.
But again, that could have also just been handled in flashbacks in a series. I think that's just more efficient, especially considering the Direction of Despair arc has been particularly graphic.
Yeah. That being said, on the comment of like that mode being in, all of the games where it's just like just like have the, like visual novel, dating sim, etc. kind of thing going on. That does remind me, because we were talking before about it. That's another December release I had forgotten about. Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp is coming out on the 3rd.
Including Danganronpa Decadence Mode, which is just from what I understand, it is a Dokapon Kingdom-style board game involving Danganronpa characters.
So it's basically an expanded version of one of the alternate modes in V3, which we will see.
Yeah.
There is like a whole like full-on like RPG board game in V3 as one of the like extra modes. And they did like a fully expanded version of it to make so what Decadence is the like full collection. It's the Switch release of Trigger Happy Havoc, Goodbye Despair, and Killing Harmony, as well as Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp. Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp is specifically the board game style bonus game. But, like, if I'm being totally honest, that's the one I'm, like, actually interested in.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Right, so, the one last question, then, that I kind of feel like... Well, okay, a couple questions, then, regarding Future Arc and theorizing. One, does anyone have any theories about what the fuck is actually going on? And two... Does anyone have any theories about who it might be that's still actually alive, given the inaccuracies on the body count?
Go ahead.
So my theory is Negi got blackout drunk in a bar, and this is all just a dream. Go ahead.
My theory, I have two different theories about who's potentially still alive. Though one of those is now based on the idea that Kimura is somehow still in play, in the fact of like her purpose of being there is still yet to come into play. Based on that, I think maybe Kyoko's still alive somehow.
Okay.
And that maybe she found out enough information, was able to get an antidote in her that would prevent it from killing, but not prevent other signs of it. And that she'll show up again. My other theory as to who's still alive would be Sakakura.
Yeah, because we did really just see him sort of drop to the ground. We didn't really see necessarily a killing blow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see Kyoko being alive partially just because of how they portrayed her poisoned body. But at the same time, having... I don't know one way or another on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have kind of previously discussed a little bit about, like, the whole thing of, like, the fake-out death, and it's just sort of, come on. Like, they've already done the fake-out death a couple times.
Yeah.
Krampus, you got any thoughts on it?
I'm going to be honest, I lost the plot on who might be that a while ago. I've just kind of been rolling with it. The theory I've had this entire time, and up until this episode, I had no reason to really follow it because of the information we'd gotten from you, was that there was no one attacker, and every single time that a murder has occurred, it was a different person doing the killing. I'm inclined to believe that now, that this is the Clue ending where one person murdered everyone else. Or where one person murdered another person and everyone was the murderer. But I don't have any hard evidence, because I would have to go back and essentially rewatch all of Future Arc. Um, but that's my running theory. It's just that each time the blackout happened, someone new killed someone else.
Okay. Fair enough.
Which is also why I kind of suspect Mitarai, because this would effectively mean that someone else is using super duper hypnosis nonsense. Either that, or it's somehow being done through pharmaceuticals, in which case that kind of clears Mitarai, but is dumb in its own right.
I can get behind that. All right. So, unless anyone else has anything they wanted to bring up, I think that's probably a pretty good place to call it for this session.
I'm still trying to mull over who I think might be the actual one, or the attacker, assuming that that we were told that there is only one attacker. It leaves us. It's heavily still on Mitarai.
Well, okay, I should clarify. In the past, I may have misspoken. It's not necessarily that there's a one attacker. There is one traitor.
Ah.
Well, we know Chisa for a fact is a traitor at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can say probably not the. In which case, I think it might be.
But
Sakakura.
I think it's
when I'm saying there is one traitor, I mean there is one traitor
One.
who is the one that set up this situation.
yeah, which I don't think is Chisa, considering
Yeah,
she
I
might
think
have helped, but I think this is one of those situations where this was unexpected or what happened to her was unexpected by herself.
so. My theory on that is Sakakura.
Okay.
And that's going to be revealed, and he show up again, having not actually died from the stab.
Well, considering he's using a heat blade, it technically would cauterize the wound, so if it missed all the vitals, which it could because Ultimate Boxer, let's just go with.
Yeah.
I mean, even then, where he was stabbed, you would mostly get, like, stomach, maybe kidney, but, like, a stomach wound mostly kills you because you bleed out really quickly and painfully.
Yep.
But, so if it, cauterized, you would be at less risk of death, but...
Still, that one seems kind of unlikely to me and more of an ass pull, quite frankly.
Yeah,
That's
like, I will
my
grant
bigger
you
issue with
that. They usually don't go into, like, weird, like, JoJo level shit of, like, oh, but I moved my organs out of the way kind of stuff.
I mean, he could still be dying. It's just not an instant kill.
Yeah, fair enough.
We'll find out next episode. We see what's in Kyoko's journal.
Yeah.
Turns out the viewers were the killer. Oh.
Crap.
Yeah, so I think that's probably then a good place to sort of wrap up here. Thank you all for joining us again for another session of Sound Goblin Storytime presents Talkin'ronpa, a Danganronpa 3 the anime podcast with slides. I'm determined to make this title as long as humanly possible.
I mean, you can't play your other favorite game of
that sounds like a
James
challenge.
for Kizakura.
Yeah. So I hope you all will join us tomorrow for the next session of our multiplayer playthrough of Tales of Berseria, where we might have left off last time at Expedition Level 2, and we'll be returning next time at Expedition Level, like, 15.
So what you're saying is you left it running Wednesday and just kind of sent stuff out constantly.
No, turns out you either misunderstood what you read or what you read was incorrect. It absolutely runs on real time. You can just check back in every half hour.
Oh, so when the game isn't running, it still runs?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we have gotten a lot of money and a lot of expeditions in, and a lot of expedition
Bograt
skills.
has been starting up the game every 30 minutes to an hour whenever he gets around to it, and sends out another expedition. So we've gotten a lot of expeditions done.
We also have a shit ton of recipes because every region has its own recipe that we learned.
Every region has its own recipe and its own ingredients for those recipes, which actually grant better experience for much better experience actually for going up cooking levels.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more tomorrow when we're actually playing and get into that. But yeah, so we'll be back tomorrow with that. We'll be back on Tuesday with something. Now that the Adventures of Meat Man have concluded, there might
determining.
There might also be a cheeky little stream slipping in on Monday. Shiv has discussed the possibility of starting up doing Monday Night Smite. He's not sure yet if that's going to start this week or possibly later on, or if it's going to happen at all, but you might see us on Monday evenings where Shiv will be playing the MOBA Smite. And then, as I mentioned sort of at the start of this, next week we will actually be taking a break both from Talkin'ronpa and also our Tales of Berseria playthrough. For Talkin'ronpa, it's multiple reasons. For Tales of Berseria, it's actually because I'm going to be at the bizarre Thanksgiving weekend Comic-Con event that's going on. So I will be unavailable, so we won't be doing this. But also, for Talkin'ronpa, the reason why is because, as I mentioned, next session will be our final session, which also means we have a little bit more than usual to cover, because we will be talking about Future Arc episodes 11 and 12, Despair Arc episode 11, because there is not a Despair Arc episode 12. We will also be talking about the Danganronpa 2.5 Nagito Komeeda OVA, and then finally concluding with Hope Arc, which was the final episode of the actual Danganronpa 3 anime. So we hope you all join us then. But until that time, I've been Bograt.
I've been the Krampus.
I've been Hunter Green.
And I'm Vincent.
Have a good one, everyone.